The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as I heard my 15-year-old daughter's voice cut through the thin garage wall like a rusty blade. "Dad's a complete loser, Mom. You deserve someone who actually gives a damn about you. Maybe Jake can give you what Dad never could." I froze under the hood of my beat-up Ford, engine oil dripping onto my work boots. Nothing like late-night family therapy, especially when I'm the only one not invited to the session. "My name's David Miller, and I've been fixing things my whole life. Cars, plumbing, electrical work, you name it, I can handle it. What I apparently can't handle is keeping my wife happy or earning my daughter's respect. At 42, I'm discovering that some things can't be repaired with the right tools and enough elbow grease." "Emma, keep your voice down," my wife Lisa hissed from the kitchen. "Your father might hear you." "So what if he does? It's the truth. Jake's got money, he's got style, and he actually treats you like a woman instead of some business partner." Jake. The name hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. Jake Morrison, Lisa's high school boyfriend. The guy who used to drive a souped-up Mustang and thought he was God's gift to every woman in Millbrook, Ohio. Last I heard, he was running Morrison's used cars on the edge of town, selling overpriced rust buckets to desperate families. I wiped my hands on an old rag and crept closer to the door, connecting the garage to the kitchen. 23 years of marriage, and I was reduced to eavesdropping on my own family. "Emma, it's complicated," Lisa said, her voice softer now. "Your father and we've grown apart. Sometimes people just aren't meant to be together forever." "Then why don't you just divorce him already? Jake's been asking you out for months. Everyone at school knows about it. It's embarrassing." "Everyone at school knows about it." The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. In a town of 8,000 people, secrets have the lifespan of a mayfly. If the high school kids were talking, then the whole damn town already knew my wife was stepping out on me. I'd suspected something for weeks. Lisa had been working late more often, always had her phone face down on the table, and she'd started wearing perfume to the grocery store. The woman who used to greet me at the door in paint-stained jeans and one of my old work shirts was suddenly dressing like she was headed to a job interview every time she left the house. "I'm handling it, Emma. These things take time." "Well, handle it faster. Jake said he wants to take us both to Cedar Point next weekend. A real family trip, not like Dad's idea of fun, which is watching him tinker with junk in the garage." My jaw clenched. I'd been restoring that Ford for 3 years, planning to give it to Emma for her 16th birthday. Apparently, my idea of a meaningful gift didn't measure up to roller coasters and cotton candy with Mom's boyfriend. I heard chairs scraping against the kitchen floor, followed by footsteps heading toward the stairs. Time to make my grand entrance. I pushed through the door, still holding the greasy rag, and found Lisa loading dishes into the dishwasher. She looked up with that fake smile she'd perfected over the past few months, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "How's the car coming along?" she asked, her voice artificially cheerful. "Oh, same old junk," I replied, watching her face for any reaction. "Just trying to fix something that might be beyond repair." She turned back to the dishes without missing a beat. "Maybe it's time to accept that some things aren't worth fixing." There it was, not even a pretense anymore. I studied my wife of 23 years, really looked at her for the first time in months. She'd lost weight, highlighted her brown hair, and was wearing makeup at 10 o'clock at night. The woman I'd married straight out of high school had transformed herself into someone I barely recognized. "Lisa, we need to talk." "It's late, David. Can't it wait until tomorrow?" "No, it can't wait." I tossed the rag onto the counter. "I know about Jake." Her hands stilled on the plate she was rinsing. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant rumble of a semi-truck passing on Route 42. "I don't know what you think you know." "Cut the crap." The words came out harder than I'd intended. "Emma just told me the whole school knows you're seeing him. How long has this been going on?" Lisa set the plate down carefully and turned to face me. Her expression shifted from fake cheerfulness to something colder, more calculating. "Since March," she said simply. We ran into each other at the Kroger, started talking, and one thing led to another. March. 4 months of lies. 4 months of her coming home to our bed after being with him. 4 months of me thinking I was losing my mind, that maybe I really was the problem. "So what happens now?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Now you move out of the master bedroom and we figure out how to tell people we're getting divorced." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She crossed her arms over her chest. "David, we've been roommates for years. We haven't had sex in 8 months. We barely talk unless it's about Emma or bills. And frankly, I'm tired of pretending we're happy. I thought we were working through a rough patch." "You thought wrong." She picked up another plate, dismissing me. "Jake makes me feel alive again. He takes me places, buys me things, makes me laugh. When's the last time you did any of that?" I wanted to remind her about the anniversary dinner I'd planned for next week, the weekend getaway I'd booked at the bed and breakfast where we'd honeymooned. I wanted to tell her about the Ford, about all the overtime I'd been working to pay for Emma's college fund. Instead, I just stood there like an idiot, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight," I said finally. "Good. And David? Don't make this harder than it has to be, for Emma's sake." I almost laughed at that. For Emma's sake, the kid who'd just called me a loser and was planning roller coaster dates with my replacement. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and headed back to the garage. The Ford sat there with its hood up, engine exposed like an open wound. At least cars were honest. When something was broken, it showed you exactly what was wrong and how to fix it. People, on the other hand, were a different story entirely. I popped open the beer and took a long pull, tasting the bitter hopiness on my tongue. Tomorrow I'd have to face the music, the whispers at the hardware store, the pitying looks from neighbors, the slow-motion train wreck of a small-town divorce. But tonight, I had my beer, my tools, and a Ford that still believed I was capable of making things run smooth again. If only everything else in my life came with a repair manual. The next morning arrived like a hangover I didn't deserve. I'd spent the night on the guest room's lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling and listening to Lisa's phone buzz with text messages until well past midnight. Each notification felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. I shuffled to the kitchen around 6 a.m., hoping to grab coffee and escape before the rest of the family woke up. No such luck. Emma sat at the breakfast bar, scrolling through her phone and eating cereal, while Lisa stood at the counter in a silk robe I'd never seen before. "Morning," I mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. Emma didn't look up from her phone. "Dad, can you drive me to school today? Mom's got an early appointment." "Sure, kiddo." I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one that said "World's Greatest Dad" that Emma had given me 3 Father's Days ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lisa cleared her throat. "David, I've got a showing at 9. Then I'm meeting with Patricia about our situation." Patricia Hendricks, divorce attorney and Lisa's former sorority sister. Of course, she'd already lined up legal representation. I was still processing the fact that my marriage was over, and she was already strategizing her exit. "Should I get a lawyer too?" I asked. "That's probably wise." She sipped her coffee without looking at me. "Patricia recommended someone in Mansfield if you're interested." "I'll figure it out myself, thanks." Emma finally glanced up from her phone. "Are you guys really getting divorced?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Lisa and I exchanged a look, the first genuine moment of communication we'd had in months. "Yes, sweetheart," Lisa said softly. "We are." "Good." Emma went back to her phone. "Jake said he'd teach me to drive in his Camaro, way cooler than learning in Dad's piece of junk." I set my mug down harder than necessary. That piece of junk is a classic Ford Mustang that I've been restoring for 3 years. Whatever. Jake's got a 2018 Camaro SS, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. Jake's got a lot of things, I muttered. Yeah, he does. Emma's tone carried a challenge. He's got a successful business, a nice house, and he actually knows how to have fun. Maybe you could learn something from him. Lisa shot Emma a warning look, but the damage was done. My own daughter was comparing me to my wife's boyfriend and finding me lacking in every category that mattered to a 15-year-old. The drive to school was mercifully quiet. Emma plugged in her earbuds and ignored me completely, which was probably for the best. I wasn't sure I could handle any more helpful comparisons to Jake Morrison. After dropping her off, I headed to Miller's Home Repair, the business I'd built from nothing over the past 15 years. The shop occupied a converted gas station on the outskirts of town with 2 service bays and a small office where I handled the books and met with customers. My assistant, Tony Ricci, was already there when I arrived, working on a kitchen sink repair for Mrs. Patterson. "Morning, boss," he called out. "You look like hell." "Thanks for the pep talk." I grabbed my work clothes from the office. "How's the Patterson job coming?" "Almost done, but we might have a problem." Tony set down his wrench and wiped his hands on a rag. "Got a call from the Hendersons this morning. They're canceling the bathroom renovation." The Henderson job was worth $8,000, money I desperately needed with divorce lawyers and alimony payments looming in my future. "Did they say why?" Tony looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Henderson said they decided to go with Morrison's Construction instead." Morrison's Construction, Jake's side business, the one he'd started after his used car lot took off. The son of a bitch was stealing my customers now. "When did Jake Morrison become a contractor?" "Word is, he's been expanding, hiring guys from Mansfield, undercutting everyone's prices." Tony shrugged. "Can't compete with someone who's willing to lose money just to steal business." I felt my jaw clench. It wasn't enough that Jake was sleeping with my wife and bonding with my daughter. Now, he was systematically destroying my livelihood too. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but the content made my blood boil. "Heard the news about you and Lisa. Don't worry, I'll take good care of both your girls. Jay." I stared at the screen, reading the message 3 times before the full arrogance of it sank in. Jake Morrison had gotten my number somehow and felt confident enough to taunt me directly. Your girls, like Lisa and Emma, were property he'd acquired in some business transaction. "Everything okay, boss?" Tony asked. "Just peachy." I shoved the phone back in my pocket. "I need to run an errand. Can you handle things here for an hour?" "Sure thing. Where you headed?" "To have a conversation with an old friend." Morrison's used cars sat on a 3-acre lot filled with vehicles that had seen better decades. The office was a double-wide trailer painted bright yellow with "Best Deals in Ohio" splashed across the side in red letters. Jake's personal ride, a pristine black Camaro SS, was parked right out front like a shrine to his success. I found Jake in the office, leaning back in a leather chair with his feet up on the desk, talking on the phone. He was still handsome in that sleazy used car salesman way, with perfectly styled hair and a smile that promised everything and delivered nothing. He saw me through the window and held up one finger, mouthing, "Just a minute," while he finished his call. The casual dismissal made my hands curl into fists. "Dave Miller!" Jake stood up and spread his arms wide when I entered the office. "Good to see you, buddy. How's business?" "Cut the crap, Jake. We need to talk." "About Lisa?" He sat back down and gestured to a folding chair across from his desk. "Look, Dave, I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. These things happen." "These things happen," I repeated. "That's your explanation for sleeping with another man's wife? Your marriage was over long before I came along. Lisa told me you two haven't been intimate in months. I just helped her realize she deserved better." The casual way he discussed my private life made me want to reach across the desk and strangle him. Instead, I kept my voice level. "So you decided to move in on a married woman." I decided to reconnect with an old friend who was clearly unhappy. Jake's smile never wavered. And honestly, Dave, can you blame her? When's the last time you took Lisa somewhere nice, bought her something pretty, made her feel special? I've been working my ass off to support my family. And I've been working my ass off to make money. There's a difference. He gestured around the office. This place clears 6 figures a year, Dave. The construction business is pulling in even more. I can give Lisa things you never could. Like what? A cheating husband who steals other men's wives? Jake's smile finally faltered. Watch yourself, Miller. Lisa came to me, not the other way around. She's tired of living like a poor man's wife. She's my wife. Not for long. Jake pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. She texted me 20 minutes ago, filed the papers this morning. The photo showed Lisa standing outside the courthouse, holding a manila envelope and smiling. The timestamp read 9:47 a.m. While I was discovering that Jake was stealing my customers, Lisa was officially ending our marriage. You're a real piece of work, Morrison. I'm a winner, Dave. Always have been. In high school, in business, and now with Lisa. He leaned forward. Here's some free advice. Don't make this ugly. Lisa and Emma are moving on, and you should too. Find yourself a nice divorced lady who'll appreciate a handyman, maybe someone with lower expectations. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking with rage. We'll see about that. Will we? Jake's smirk returned. Because from where I'm sitting, you don't have much leverage. Your business is struggling, your wife's gone, and your daughter thinks you're a loser. What exactly are you going to do about it? I turned and walked out without another word, but not before I noticed the keys to his Camaro sitting on the desk next to his coffee cup. Outside, I circled the lot slowly, looking at Jake's pride and joy. The Camaro was immaculate, not a scratch on the paint, chrome wheels that probably cost more than most people's cars. A monument to his success and my failure. I pulled out my house key and ran it along the driver's side door, leaving a deep gouge in the black paint. Then I carved cheater into the hood and homewrecker across the trunk. For good measure, I let the air out of all 4 tires. On the windshield, I left a note written on the back of a business card. Hope this is covered by your warranty. Dave Miller. Mrs. Patterson from across the street was walking her dog and saw the whole thing. She pulled out her phone and snapped a picture, shaking her head disapprovingly. By tonight, half the town would know about my little vandalism spree. I didn't care. Let them talk. Jake Morrison wanted to play games? I'd show him what 23 years of suppressed anger looked like. My phone was ringing before I made it back to the shop. Lisa's number flashed on the screen. You keyed his car? She screamed before I could say hello. Are you out of your mind? Just getting started, I said calmly. David, this is exactly the kind of behavior that drove me away in the first place. You're acting like a child. I'm acting like a man whose wife is screwing around with the town sleazeball. We're getting divorced. What I do with my personal life is none of your business anymore. It became my business when your boyfriend started texting me and stealing my customers. There was a pause. What are you talking about? I read her Jake's text message word for word. Another pause, longer this time. David, I'm sorry about that. Jake can be overly confident sometimes. But vandalizing his car isn't going to solve anything. It made me feel better. Well, congratulations. You've just given him grounds to press charges and made yourself look like a psychopath to the whole town. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my truck outside the shop, watching Tony work through the window. My phone buzzed with notifications, Facebook messages, texts from neighbors, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The news was already spreading. In a town like Millbrook, drama traveled faster than gossip, and gossip traveled at the speed of light. I had 2 choices: slink home with my tail between my legs and accept my role as the pathetic, abandoned husband, or double down and show everyone what happened when you push David Miller too far. I thought about Jake's smug face, Lisa's casual dismissal of our marriage, and Emma's cruel comparisons. I thought about 23 years of working my ass off for a family that saw me as nothing more than a paycheck and a source of embarrassment. Then I thought about the look on Jake's face when he saw what I'd done to his precious Camaro. For the first time in months, I smiled. 3 days after the Camaro incident, I was officially the most talked-about man in Millbrook. The story had grown in the telling, as stories do in small towns. By some accounts, I'd attacked Jake with a crowbar. Others claimed I'd spray-painted obscenities across his entire car lot. The truth was boring compared to the mythology, but the result was the same. I was now the unhinged ex-husband everyone watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. Lisa had moved out while I was at work, taking Emma and most of the furniture. She left behind a note on the kitchen counter. "David, I've taken what I need. The rest is yours. Please don't contact me unless it's an emergency involving Emma. Lisa." The house felt like a museum exhibit. Here's where a family used to live. Emma's room was stripped bare except for a few posters she'd deemed too childish for her new life. The master bedroom contained only my clothes and a mattress on the floor. Even the good coffee maker was gone. I was sitting in my empty living room, eating cereal for dinner and watching the news, when my sister Karen called. "Jesus Christ, David, what the hell is going on? Mom heard from Aunt Ruth that you went crazy and destroyed some guy's car." Karen lived 2 hours away in Columbus, worked for the state government, and had always been the smart one in the family. She was also the only person who'd ever been able to talk sense into me when I was spiraling. "It's complicated," I said. "Uncomplicate it. Start from the beginning." I told her everything. Lisa's affair, the divorce papers, Jake's taunting text message, my moment of automotive vandalism. Karen listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. "So let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "Your wife of 23 years is cheating on you with her high school boyfriend, who's also stealing your customers and sending you threatening messages. And your response was to key his car? That's the short version. David, you're an idiot. Thanks for the support. I'm serious. You're playing his game instead of using your head. This Jake guy wants you to look like the crazy ex-husband. Every time you lash out, you prove his point. So what am I supposed to do? Just take it? You're supposed to be smarter than him." Karen's voice took on the tone she used when explaining obvious things to stupid people. "You want revenge? Don't give him what he expects. Give him what he doesn't see coming." "Such as?" "I don't know yet, but I'm driving down this weekend to help you figure it out. And David, don't do anything else stupid until I get there." She hung up before I could argue. Karen had always been bossy, but she was also usually right. Maybe it was time to stop reacting and start planning. The next morning, I decided to get breakfast at Mel's Diner, the local gossip hub where everyone's business got dissected over coffee and eggs. If I was going to be the town's main source of entertainment, I might as well make an appearance. The conversation died when I walked in. 20-some people suddenly became very interested in their food, except for Mel himself, who nodded from behind the counter. "Morning, Dave? Coffee?" "Please." I took a seat at the counter, ignoring the whispers behind me. "Rough week?" Mel asked, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. "You could say that. For what it's worth, Jake Morrison's always been a snake. Most folks around here know that. Most folks around here are also talking about me like I'm some kind of psycho." Mel shrugged. "People talk. Doesn't mean they're taking sides. Morrison's got money, but he's not from here. You are." It was a small comfort, but I'd take what I could get. I ordered eggs and toast and was halfway through my meal when Jake Morrison himself walked in. The diner went dead silent. Jake surveyed the room like a conquering hero, his gaze settling on me with obvious amusement. He was wearing an expensive-looking suit and his usual cocky grin. "Morning, everyone," he announced. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" A few people mumbled responses. Jake made his way to the counter, deliberately choosing the stool right next to mine. "Dave, good to see you out and about. How's the home repair business?" I kept eating, not trusting myself to speak. "I heard the Hendersons were happy with my work on their bathroom," Jake continued. "Amazing what you can accomplish when you use quality materials and skilled labor. Amazing what you can accomplish when you undercut honest contractors," Mel said quietly. Jake's smile tightened. "Competition's good for everyone, Mel. Keeps us all sharp. Competition's one thing, predatory pricing is another. Well, I prefer to think of it as giving customers options." Jake turned back to me. "Speaking of options, Dave, Lisa and Emma are doing great in their new place. Emma's excited about starting driving lessons next week. The mention of my daughter made my jaw clench, but I forced myself to stay calm. Karen was right. This was exactly what Jake wanted. He was performing for an audience, trying to provoke me into another public meltdown. "That's nice," I said evenly. Jake looked disappointed by my lack of reaction. "Lisa mentioned you two are working out the custody arrangements. I told her I'd be happy to help out with Emma anytime. Take her to movies, shopping, whatever she needs. I've always wanted to be a father figure." That did it. I set down my fork and turned to face him. "Jake, let me explain something to you. Emma is my daughter. Lisa is still my wife until the divorce is final. And you're a used car salesman with delusions of grandeur. Those are facts, not opinions. Actually, Lisa filed for divorce 3 days ago. So technically, you're still the guy who couldn't get the girl in high school and had to wait 25 years for a second chance." I stood up and threw a $10 bill on the counter. "Enjoy your coffee." I walked out to scattered applause from a few of the older men in the diner. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small victory. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Nice show at the diner, but you're still losing. Jay." This time, I didn't react. Instead, I drove to the library and spent 2 hours researching Jake Morrison's businesses. Public records, business licenses, customer complaints, financial filings, everything I could find about Morrison's used cars and Morrison's construction. What I discovered was interesting. Jake's construction business had been operating for less than 6 months, but he'd already pulled permits for a dozen major projects around town. His used car lot showed consistent profits, but several customers had filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau about odometer tampering and undisclosed accident damage. Most interesting of all was a lawsuit from 2019, where Jake had been accused of selling a flood-damaged vehicle without disclosure. The case had been settled out of court, but the paperwork was public record. I printed everything and drove home to study it more carefully. If Jake wanted to play games, I'd show him what 20 years of small-town networking could accomplish. My first call was to Bobby Hendricks, who ran the local newspaper. Bobby and I had gone to high school together, and he owed me a favor from when I'd fixed his printing press for free. "Dave Miller," Bobby said when he picked up. "Heard you've been making headlines yourself lately. That's actually why I'm calling. I've got a story you might be interested in. About your divorce? Because I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. About consumer protection, specifically used car dealers who might not be entirely honest with their customers." There was a pause. "What kind of information are we talking about?" "The kind that might save some local families from getting ripped off. You free for coffee this afternoon?" "I'll be at the office until 5. My second call was to Tom Bradley, who owned Bradley's Auto Repair and had been losing customers to Jake's construction side business. Tom was not happy about the competition. "That son of a bitch is bidding jobs at cost," Tom complained. "No way he's making money at those prices." "Maybe he's not trying to make money. Maybe he's just trying to drive everyone else out of business." "Well, it's working. I've lost 3 big jobs this month to Morrison Construction. What if I told you Jake might not be as successful as he wants people to think?" I'd say I'm listening. By the end of the day, I had meetings scheduled with Bobby Hendricks, Tom Bradley, and Patricia Kowalski, who ran the Chamber of Commerce. I also had copies of every public document related to Jake Morrison's business dealings. Karen was right. Instead of acting like the crazy ex-husband, I needed to be smarter. Jake Morrison had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I was just a dumb contractor who would roll over and accept defeat. He was about to learn that underestimating people was a dangerous habit. My phone rang as I was organizing the paperwork. Lisa's number flashed on the screen. "David, we need to talk." "About what?" "About Emma. She's been acting out since we moved, and I think she's having second thoughts about the divorce." For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. "What kind of second thoughts?" "She misses you. She misses the house. She asked me yesterday if there was any way we could work things out." "Is there?" A long pause. "I don't know. Maybe. But not if you keep acting like a maniac. Jake told me about what happened at the diner today." "Jake started that conversation, not me." "I know, and I told him to back off. David, I'm willing to try counseling if you're willing to get your anger under control." I looked at the stack of documents on my kitchen table, my carefully planned campaign to destroy Jake Morrison's reputation and business. Lisa was offering me a chance to get my family back, but it would mean giving up my revenge. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. Emma starts school next week, and I'd like to have this settled before then." After she hung up, I sat in my empty house and weighed my options. I could pursue my vendetta against Jake and probably lose my family forever. Or I could swallow my pride, accept that my wife had cheated, and try to rebuild what we'd had. The smart choice was obvious. The satisfying choice was something else entirely. I looked at Jake's smug face in the newspaper photo I'd printed, remembered his taunting texts and his casual claim on my wife and daughter. Some things were more important than being smart. I picked up the phone and called Bobby Hendricks. "Bobby, it's Dave Miller. About that story we discussed. I've got everything you need." The article ran on the front page of the Millbrook Gazette on Thursday morning, under the headline, "Local Car Dealer Faces Questions About Business Practices." Bobby Hendricks had done his homework, interviewing 3 families who'd bought lemons from Morrison's used cars and 2 contractors who'd been undercut by Morrison Construction's suspiciously low bids. The piece didn't accuse Jake of anything illegal, but it raised enough questions to make people think twice about doing business with him. More importantly, it established a pattern of complaints that other customers would recognize. I was reading the article for the 3rd time over coffee when my phone rang. Lisa's number, which was becoming a regular source of anxiety. "David, what did you do?" "Good morning to you too." "The newspaper article. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about." I took a sip of coffee, savoring the moment. "I provided some public information to a local journalist. It's called civic responsibility. It's called harassment. Jake is furious. Jake should be more careful about his business practices. This is exactly what I was afraid of." Lisa's voice rose to that pitch that meant she was losing her temper. "I offered you a chance to work things out, to go to counseling, and instead, you're trying to destroy my boyfriend's livelihood. Your boyfriend destroyed my livelihood first, and my marriage, and my relationship with my daughter. That's not how it happened, and you know it." "How did it happen, Lisa? Because from where I'm sitting, you had an affair, filed for divorce without warning, turned my daughter against me, and moved in with a guy who's been systematically stealing my customers. Did I miss anything?" There was a long pause. When Lisa spoke again, her voice was cold and controlled. "You missed the part where you ignored me for 5 years, where you chose your work over your family every single time, where you stopped trying to be a husband and became just another piece of furniture in the house. I was working to support us. You were hiding in that garage because it was easier than dealing with real life. Jake makes me feel like a woman again, David. When's the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, like you wanted me?" The question hit harder than I'd expected. When was the last time? I honestly couldn't remember. That doesn't excuse cheating. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. She sighed. David, I'm tired of fighting. Emma starts school Monday and she's already upset about the divorce. This newspaper thing is just making everything worse. Maybe Jake should have thought of that before he started playing games. Maybe you should think about what's best for Emma instead of what makes you feel better. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, feeling the familiar mixture of anger and guilt that had become my constant companion. Lisa wasn't entirely wrong. I had checked out of our marriage years ago, but that didn't give her the right to humiliate me publicly while she played house with her high school boyfriend. My sister Karen arrived that afternoon, driving her sensible Honda and carrying a weekend bag that suggested she was planning to stay until I got my act together. You look like hell, she said, surveying my empty living room. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't cereal or takeout? Good to see you too. Karen set her bag down and pulled out a folder. I've been doing some research on your friend Jake Morrison. Want to know what I found? You investigated Jake? I investigated everyone. Jake, Lisa, even Emma's social media accounts. She opened the folder and spread papers across my kitchen table. Your wife's boyfriend is in serious financial trouble. I leaned forward to examine the documents. Credit reports, loan applications, business filings. Karen had somehow obtained information that should have been private. How did you get all this? I work for the state, remember? I have access to databases that most people don't. And before you ask, yes, it's all legal as long as I don't use it for personal gain. The picture that emerged was fascinating. Jake Morrison's businesses were heavily leveraged, with loans and credit lines that far exceeded their apparent income. The used car lot was profitable, but barely. Morrison Construction was operating at a loss, exactly as Tom Bradley had suspected. He's been using the car lot's profits to subsidize the construction business, Karen explained, probably hoping to establish himself in the market before raising his prices. But he's burning through cash faster than he's making it. So he's not as successful as he pretends to be. He's about 6 months away from bankruptcy if he doesn't turn things around. Karen pulled out another document. And here's the interesting part. He took out a personal loan against his house last month. $50,000. For what? Good question. It wasn't for business expenses because those would have gone through the company accounts. This was personal. I studied the loan paperwork, trying to make sense of the timeline. Jake had borrowed $50,000 in June, just 2 months after he'd started seeing Lisa. You think he's trying to impress her with money he doesn't have? I think Jake Morrison is a man who's in over his head and making increasingly desperate decisions to maintain his image. Karen gathered the papers. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. Emma's number, which was rare. She usually communicated with me through Lisa, or not at all. Dad, can you pick me up? Mom and Jake are fighting and I don't want to be here. I was out the door before Karen could ask questions. I found Emma sitting on the curb outside Lisa's new apartment, a converted carriage house behind one of the Victorian mansions on Elm Street. She looked younger than her 15 years, hunched over her phone with her backpack beside her. Hey, kiddo, I said, getting out of the truck. Rough day? Mom and Jake have been screaming at each other for an hour. She climbed into the passenger seat without looking at me. Something about money in the newspaper and how everything's your fault. What do you think? Emma shrugged. I think adults are stupid. Fair assessment. I started the engine. You want to go home or you want to get ice cream and talk? Ice cream, but not at Mel's. Everyone there stares at us like we're some kind of reality TV show. We drove to the Dairy Queen on Route 42, far enough from downtown to avoid the gossip crowd. Emma ordered a large chocolate sundae and didn't speak until she was halfway through it. Dad, are you really trying to ruin Jake's business? The question was more direct than I'd expected from her. I considered lying, giving her some sanitized version of the truth that would make me look better. Yeah, I am. Why? Because he ruined my business first, and my marriage, and he's been rubbing my face in it ever since. Emma nodded slowly. He's not as nice as Mom thinks he is. What do you mean? He talks to her different when he thinks no one's listening. And he's always on his phone, talking about money and deals and stuff. Mom gets this worried look sometimes. Are you okay living there? I guess. The apartment's smaller than our house, and Jake's there all the time. He keeps trying to be my friend, but it's weird, you know, like he's acting. I felt a surge of protective anger. Has he said anything inappropriate to you? No, nothing like that. He tries too hard. Keeps asking about boys I like and what kind of music I listen to. Mom thinks it's sweet, but it feels fake. We sat in silence for a few minutes while Emma finished her sundae. Finally, she looked at me directly for the first time in weeks. Dad, do you hate Mom? No, kiddo. I'm angry at her and I'm hurt, but I don't hate her. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. Emma, why would you ask that? Because I said mean things about you. I called you a loser and I said Jake was better than you. I didn't really mean it. I was just mad about the divorce. I know you were mad, and I know you're stuck in the middle of something that isn't your fault. But Emma, I could never hate you. You're the best thing I ever did. She started crying then, quietly at first, then harder. I moved to her side of the booth and put my arm around her while she sobbed into my shirt. I want to come home, Dad. I miss my room and I miss the garage and I miss watching you work on the car. Jake's Camaro is stupid. I want to learn to drive in the Mustang. What does Mom say about that? Mom says we have to give Jake a chance. She says he's good for us and he can provide things you can't. But I don't care about his money or his fancy car. I just want my family back. I held my daughter while she cried, feeling my own eyes burn with unshed tears. Emma was the innocent victim in all of this, caught between her parents' failed marriage and her mother's new relationship. She deserved better than being a pawn in our adult games. Emma, I need you to know something. Whatever happens between me and Mom, whatever happens with Jake, you'll always have a place with me. Always. Promise? I promise. We drove back to Lisa's apartment in comfortable silence. Emma seemed calmer, and I felt like we'd reconnected for the first time since this whole mess started. Lisa was waiting on the front steps when we pulled up, her face tight with worry and anger. Where have you been? I've been calling for 2 hours. Getting ice cream with Dad, Emma said, climbing out of the truck. We needed to talk. Emma, go inside. I need to speak with your father. Emma hesitated, looking between us. Are you going to fight? We're going to have a conversation, Lisa said firmly. Go! When Emma was inside, Lisa turned to me with fire in her eyes. Don't you ever take my daughter without telling me where you're going. Our daughter called me because she was upset. I'm not going to ignore her when she needs me. She was upset because of that newspaper article, because of your vendetta against Jake. She was upset because you and Jake were screaming at each other about money problems. Lisa's expression flickered. We weren't screaming. Emma says otherwise. She also says Jake's been acting strange lately. Money troubles, Lisa? That's none of your business. It is, if it affects Emma. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Lisa, I know about the loans. I know Jake's businesses are failing. I know he borrowed $50,000 against his house last month. Is that the kind of stability you want for our daughter? Lisa's face went pale. How do you know about that? I know a lot of things. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to tell you to stay out of my personal life and stop trying to destroy the man I love. The man you love is using you, Lisa. He's desperate for money and image, and you're his ticket to respectability. Wake up before you get hurt. Go to hell, David. She turned and walked into the apartment, slamming the door behind her. I sat in my truck for a moment, watching the windows glow with warm light. My wife and daughter were in there, building a new life without me, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to stop it. But I could make sure Jake Morrison paid for destroying what we'd had. I drove home to find Karen waiting with a bottle of wine and a determined expression. "How's Emma?" Confused, scared, missing her old life but trying to be loyal to her mother. And Lisa? Stubborn as ever. She's convinced Jake is her salvation, even though he's obviously using her. Karen poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. "David, I'm going to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. What's your endgame here?" "I want Jake Morrison to pay for what he's done to my family." "And then what? You think Lisa's going to come running back to you after you destroy her boyfriend?" The question stopped me cold. I hadn't thought beyond revenge, hadn't considered what would happen after I'd brought Jake down. "I don't know," I admitted. "Then maybe it's time to figure that out. Because right now, you're acting like a man with nothing left to lose. That's a dangerous way to think." She was right, of course. But as I sat in my empty house, drinking wine with my sister and planning my next move against Jake Morrison, I realized that maybe having nothing left to lose was exactly the kind of freedom I needed. The war was just getting started. 2 weeks later, Jake Morrison's world began to unravel in spectacular fashion. The newspaper article had been just the opening shot. What followed was a carefully orchestrated campaign that would have made Sun Tzu proud. It started with the Better Business Bureau complaint I'd filed, complete with documentation of Jake's shady business practices. Then came the anonymous tip to the state licensing board about Morrison Construction operating without proper insurance. The county building inspector suddenly became very interested in Jake's recent projects, discovering several code violations that required expensive corrections. But the masterstroke came from an unexpected source: Jake's own arrogance. I was having coffee with Tom Bradley at his auto shop when Tom's phone rang. He listened for a moment, then grinned and put the call on speaker. "Tom, it's Jerry Patterson. You remember that bathroom job Jake Morrison stole from you? Well, he just flooded my basement, burst pipe behind the new vanity, 3 inches of water throughout the finished basement. My insurance company wants to sue him, and I thought you'd want to know." Tom winked at me. "Sorry to hear that, Jerry. Of course, if you need someone to fix Morrison's mess, I know a guy who does quality work." After Jerry hung up, Tom was practically gleeful. "That's the 3rd callback this week. Morrison's been cutting so many corners that his jobs are falling apart faster than he can finish them." "Couldn't happen to a nicer guy," I said. My phone buzzed with a text from Karen. "Check your email. Found something interesting." The attachment was a credit report showing that Jake had missed his last 2 loan payments. His financial house of cards was collapsing right on schedule. That afternoon, I decided to visit Lisa. It was time to have an honest conversation about Emma's future and maybe plant a few seeds of doubt about Jake's stability. I found Lisa in the apartment's small kitchen, looking tired and stressed. She'd lost weight since moving out, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "David, what are you doing here?" I wanted to talk about Emma. She's been calling me every day, asking when she can come home. "This is her home now, is it? Because she seems pretty unhappy here." I gestured around the cramped apartment. "This place isn't exactly what you're used to. It's temporary. Jake's looking at houses for us to buy together." "With what money? His businesses are failing, Lisa. The construction company's hemorrhaging cash, and the car lot barely breaks even." Lisa's jaw tightened. "Jake's going through a rough patch, but he'll bounce back. He always does." "What if he doesn't? What if you've tied yourself to a sinking ship? What I do with my life is none of your concern anymore. It is when it affects Emma." I pulled out my phone and showed her the credit report Karen had sent. "Lisa, look at this. Jake's missed loan payments, his credit score is tanking, and he owes more money than his businesses are worth. This isn't a rough patch. It's a financial disaster. Lisa stared at the screen, her face growing pale. Where did you get this? Does it matter? The point is, Jake's been lying to you about his success. He's broke, Lisa. Worse than broke. Even if that's true, it doesn't change how I feel about him. Doesn't it? You left me because I couldn't give you the lifestyle you wanted. Now you're with a guy who's even worse off financially, but he's better at hiding it. Lisa sat down heavily at the kitchen table. For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked uncertain. Jake says he's got some big deals coming through, new contracts that will turn everything around. Jake says a lot of things. How many of them have turned out to be true? Before Lisa could answer, the apartment door opened and Jake walked in, looking harried and angry. He stopped short when he saw me. What the hell is he doing here? We're discussing Emma, Lisa said quietly. Emma's fine. She's adjusting to her new life, and she doesn't need her father filling her head with poison. Jake's usual confidence was strained, replaced by something desperate and mean. Actually, Emma's miserable, I said. She wants to come home. This is her home now, and if you don't like it, you can take it up with my lawyer. Your lawyer? The one you can't afford because you're 3 months behind on your loan payments? Jake's face flushed red. Lisa, what did you tell him? I didn't tell him anything. David, how do you know about Jake's finances? I know a lot of things. I know Jake borrowed $50,000 against his house to keep his businesses afloat. I know he's been underbidding jobs just to steal customers, then cutting corners to try to make a profit. I know his construction company has been operating without proper insurance for 6 months. That's a lie, Jake snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Want me to call the state licensing board and ask them about your recent inspection? Jake looked at Lisa, who was staring at him with growing alarm. Lisa, don't listen to him. He's trying to break us up. Are you behind on your loan payments? Lisa asked quietly. It's temporary. I told you I've got deals pending. Are you behind on your payments, Jake? The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Jake nodded. How far behind? 3 months. But Lisa, I can explain. 3 months? Lisa's voice rose. Jake, you told me you were successful. You said you could provide for Emma and me. I will. I just need a little more time. Time for what? To dig yourself deeper into debt? To drag Emma and me down with you? I could see the exact moment when Lisa's faith in Jake crumbled. Her face went through a series of emotions, betrayal, anger, and finally, a cold calculation that I recognized from our own marriage. David, can you give us some privacy? She said. Sure, but Lisa, Emma's always welcome at home. Both of you are. I left them to their fight and drove to the Millbrook Community Festival, which was setting up for the weekend. The annual festival was the town's biggest event, drawing visitors from 3 counties for food, music, and the kind of small-town charm that people from the cities found quaint. This year's festival would be memorable for different reasons. I found the festival coordinator, Martha Reynolds, setting up the main stage where local bands and speakers would perform throughout the weekend. Dave Miller, she said with a smile. Good to see you. Are you planning to set up a booth for your business? Actually, I was hoping I could say a few words at tomorrow's opening ceremony. Maybe talk about the importance of supporting local businesses. Martha looked uncertain. Well, I suppose that would be appropriate. But David, I heard about your troubles with Lisa and that Morrison fellow. I hope you're not planning to air your personal business in public. Nothing like that, Martha. Just want to remind people about the value of honest work and community trust. All right then. You can speak right after Mayor Hendricks welcomes everyone. I spent the evening preparing my remarks, choosing each word carefully. By the time I was finished, I had a speech that would destroy Jake Morrison's reputation once and for all, while maintaining my own dignity and focusing on broader themes of honesty and community values. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the festival. By 10 a.m., the town square was packed with families, vendors, and visitors. The smell of funnel cake and barbecue filled the air, and children ran between the booths while their parents browsed local crafts and produce. I spotted Lisa and Emma near the face painting booth. Lisa looked tired and stressed, while Emma seemed more animated than she'd been in weeks. Jake was nowhere to be seen. Mayor Hendricks opened the festival with his usual remarks about community spirit and small-town values. Then Martha Reynolds introduced me as a local businessman who wants to share some thoughts about supporting our neighbors. I walked onto the stage and looked out at the crowd. Several hundred people had gathered around the main stage, including most of the town's business owners, many of my former customers, and a significant portion of the local gossip network. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out to support our community festival. Scattered applause. I could see Lisa watching me with a worried expression, probably wondering if I was about to humiliate myself publicly. I want to talk to you today about trust, about the bonds that hold a community together, and what happens when those bonds are broken. More people were gathering now, sensing that this might be more interesting than the usual festival speeches. For 20 years, I've run Miller's Home Repair here in Millbrook. I've fixed your plumbing, repaired your roofs, and tried to give you honest work at fair prices. That's what small-town business is supposed to be about. Neighbors helping neighbors, building relationships that last. I paused, making eye contact with several people in the crowd. But lately, we've seen a different kind of business practice in our town. Companies that make promises they can't keep. Contractors who undercut honest businesses, then cut corners to try to make a profit. Salesmen who present themselves as successful while drowning in debt. A murmur ran through the crowd. People were starting to understand where this was heading. I'm not going to name names, because the truth speaks for itself. But I will say this. When someone's construction company operates without proper insurance, when they miss loan payments for months at a time, when they flood your basement because they don't know how to properly install plumbing, that's not competition. That's fraud. The murmur grew louder. I could see Tom Bradley grinning in the crowd, and several other local contractors nodding in agreement. Some of you have been hurt by these practices. You've paid for work that had to be redone. You've trusted people who betrayed that trust for their own gain, and some of you, I looked directly at Lisa, have been lied to by people who claim to offer you something better. That's when Jake Morrison pushed through the crowd, his face red with rage. "That's enough," he shouted. "You can't prove any of that." The crowd turned to look at him, and I could see the moment when Jake realized he'd made a terrible mistake. By interrupting my speech, by making himself the obvious target of my remarks, he'd confirmed everything I'd been implying. "Jake Morrison, everyone," I said calmly. "The man who's been operating Morrison Construction without proper insurance for 6 months. The man who's 3 months behind on his loan payments. The man who borrowed $50,000 against his house to keep his failing businesses afloat." "You son of a bitch," Jake snarled, starting toward the stage. "The man," I continued, raising my voice, "who seduced another man's wife with promises of financial security while his own world was falling apart." Jake reached the stage and tried to climb up, but several men in the crowd held him back. The festival had turned into a spectacle, and Jake was the main attraction. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "this is what happens when you build your life on lies. When you steal other people's customers, other people's wives, other people's dignity, eventually, the truth catches up with you." "Lisa," Jake called out desperately, "don't listen to him. You know what we have together." But Lisa was already walking away, pulling Emma with her. The crowd parted to let them through, and I could see the shame and anger on Lisa's face. She'd been played just as surely as I had, and she was realizing it in front of the entire town. "The festival's about celebrating our community," I concluded. "About supporting the people and businesses that make Millbrook a good place to live. I encourage all of you to choose carefully who you trust with your money, your homes, and your families. I walked off the stage to enthusiastic applause, leaving Jake standing in the crowd like a man who'd just watched his world collapse in real time. The rest of the festival was a blur of congratulations, handshakes, and knowing looks. Several people mentioned that they'd had problems with Morrison Construction, and Tom Bradley told me he'd already gotten 3 calls from customers wanting to switch back to local contractors. But the real victory came that evening when Lisa called. "David, we need to talk." "About what?" "About coming home, Emma and me, if you'll have us." I looked around my empty house, at the spaces where furniture used to be, at the life I'd been trying to rebuild from scratch. "What about Jake?" "Jake's finished. The bank called this afternoon. They're foreclosing on his house. His businesses are bankrupt. And apparently, I'm not the only woman he's been lying to. There's someone named Jennifer in Mansfield who thought she was his girlfriend too." "I'm sorry, Lisa." "No, you're not, and you shouldn't be. You tried to warn me, and I wouldn't listen." She paused. "David, I know I hurt you. I know I humiliated you and broke up our family for someone who turned out to be a fraud. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but—" "Lisa? Yes? Come home, both of you. We'll figure out the rest later." 2 hours later, Lisa's car pulled into our driveway. Emma jumped out and ran to me, throwing her arms around my waist like she used to when she was little. "Dad, I missed you so much." "I missed you too, kiddo." Lisa approached more cautiously, carrying a single suitcase. "This doesn't mean everything's okay between us," she said. "I know. We have a lot of work to do. Counseling, rebuilding trust, figuring out how to be a family again." "I know. And you can't keep acting like a crazy person when things don't go your way." I smiled. "I'll try to keep the revenge plots to a minimum." "See that you do." But she was almost smiling too. As we walked into the house together, Emma chattering about everything she wanted to show me in her room, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's getting your life back. Jake Morrison had lost everything: his businesses, his house, his reputation, and the woman he'd thought he could steal from me. He'd be leaving town soon, probably to start over somewhere else where people didn't know his history. But I had my family back, my daughter's respect restored, and a second chance to be the husband and father I should have been all along. As for Lisa and me, we had a long road ahead of us. Trust, once broken, doesn't repair easily, but we had time, we had love buried under all the hurt and anger, and we had Emma to remind us what really mattered. The Ford Mustang was still in the garage, waiting to be finished. Maybe Emma and I would work on it together, father and daughter rebuilding something beautiful from parts that had been broken. Some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth forgiving. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to learn the difference before it's too late.